Ask yourself, am I joyful or am I happy? Happiness is a state of consciousness that is entirely dependent on the external world. It is what you feel when a frightened part of your personality gets what it wants. It's transient. It's ephemeral. You go up and you go down. Sometimes the up can be very high up and the down can be very far down. Well, what's the difference between that and joy? Joy is independent of what happens in the world. Joy is a state of being, not a state of consciousness. As you challenge the frightened parts of your personality, which means move beyond their control, and you have to recognize them and experience them first, you begin to move toward joy. You begin to move toward meaning. What is waiting for you is the stabilized, ongoing experience of joy, because that's what you are when no fear prevents you from experiencing what you are. Welcome back. I have an interesting question for you. Ask yourself, am I joyful or am I happy? It may sound like an ordinary question, but it's not. Why is that? There is a difference between happiness and joy. Happiness is what you feel when a frightened part of your personality gets what it wants. Now, a frightened part of your personality is a shorthand for an internal dynamic in you that originates in fear. And you experience the frightened parts of your personality as jealousy, resentment, overwhelm, competitiveness, impatience, superiority, inferiority. Any of those sound familiar? They all sound familiar to me because I've experienced all of them a lot. I suspect you have too. If you think you haven't, that's an indication to you that you would benefit from developing emotional awareness. And one of these podcasts is devoted to developing emotional awareness, and it could help you. It could help you because if you're not aware of the frightened parts of your personality when they're active in you, they are acting on your behalf. And you are the one that is experiencing the consequences of what they create. And they never create constructive, healthy, beneficial consequences. That's why it's good to be aware of them. So now back to joyful and happy. Suppose you have wanted to have a certain friend, like you want a girlfriend or you want a boyfriend, and that person decides that they want to be with you too. And that will make a frightened part of your personality very happy. It's like being on a roller coaster and you've gone all the way to the top now. You're at the top, you can see forever. And then 2 or 3 months later, your new friend says, this isn't working out for me. We need to talk. I don't feel I want to continue doing this anymore. And in fact, I found somebody else I want to do this with. And so I'm leaving right now. When that happens, you go all the way down to the bottom of the roller coaster. You bottom out. Everything seems like it's going wrong. Before, everything seemed like it was going right. That's what happiness is. Happiness is a state of consciousness that is entirely dependent on the external world. If frightened parts of your personality demand that the world be a certain way, and every one of them does, it will be unhappy when the world is not that way. It's transient. It's ephemeral. You go up and you go down. You go up when you are happy. You go down when you are unhappy. Sometimes the up can be very high up and the down can be very far down. Well, what's the difference between that and joy? Joy is a state of being, not a state of consciousness. It is an experience that you enter when you have developed the ability to distinguish between frightened parts of your personality and loving parts of your personality. And you know how to choose the loving parts of your personality or to act and speak from a loving part of your personality when a frightened part of your personality is active. When the frightened part of your personality is active, you'll feel painful physical sensations in your energy processing centers, your throat, your chest, your solar plexus area. Physical sensations like aching, throbbing, stinging, stabbing, burning. They hurt. They physically hurt. When you're experiencing a loving part of your personality, you're experiencing good feeling physical sensations, the kind you want more of. When you're content, for example, or you're grateful, or you're in awe of the universe. And when you act from the loving parts of your personality, you create constructive and lovely physical sensations. And these are not dependent on what's happening in the world. This process of learning how to choose to speak or act from loving parts of your personality while frightened parts of your personality are active is called creating authentic power. It's real power. That distinguishes it from the old kind of power that we had when we were 5 sensory, or we strive to have. And that's external power, the ability to manipulate and control. And some people don't have very much of it. You can see them. They're living under bridges. They're sleeping on sidewalks. They're working in basements as the people who keep a building clean and warm. They don't have much external power compared to the people who are shopping in high fashion, high end, very expensive shops, and their offices are on a high floor in the same building, corner office looking over the city. They've got more external power, quite a bit. External power comes in the form of money, position, prestige, recognition. But authentic power, you have to create in yourself. And you do that by distinguishing within you between love and fear and choosing to act or speak from love while you're experiencing fear. That means painful physical sensations in your energy processing centers and the judgmental, critical thoughts that frighten parts of your personality think. I'm not good enough. I'm better than this. Why aren't people paying attention to me? I'm always paying attention to other people. It's comparative judgmental thinking. And it comes with the territory when you're in a frightened part of your personality. Joy is independent of what happens in the world. When you are grateful for something, not because it's what you wanted and you finally got it, but when you're grateful for what you are and who you are, when you're grateful for a beautiful sunset, when you're grateful for a magnificent ocean wave that you see compounding in that moment, you're not hurting. You're enjoying yourself. There's no difference between you and the wave, you and the sunset, you and the great mountain that has captivated you for a moment. You and the mountain become one, and there's joy in that. When you and your life become one in a state of joy, you become naturally who you are. That's called loving. That's an experience of love. It is joy. Meaning is joy. Substitute joy for the word meaning. You're always looking for meaning. At least if you're aware you are. If you're in a frightened part of your personality, you're looking for something to satisfy the needs of that part of your personality. If it's an addiction, it could be sex, food, drugs, shopping, gambling. But when you enjoy, none of that matters. It's not that you think, oh, no, I don't want to do that anymore. It doesn't exist for you. Joy is your natural state of being. As you challenge the frightened parts of your personality, which means move beyond their control, and you have to recognize them and experience them first, you begin to move toward joy. You begin to move toward meaning. That's the same thing. You were born to give gifts. When you're not giving them, you're not going to be content. You're not going to be joyful. You're not going to be patient. There were some scrolls discovered in 1948 in Nag Hammadi, Egypt. They came to be called the Gnostic Gospels. That's because they were written by early Christians. And in about the second century AD, which means after Christ, the church that was built on Christ, who proclaimed that love is what we are, and spent his short time on the earth, or at least from the time he was 33 to the time that his body was executed, painfully, slowly, morbidly, loving people. He stood for love. He spoke about love. He challenged fear. His message was love. Love your neighbor. How much? How about enough to die for them? No, I don't think I love my neighbor that much. Well, Christ did, and he proved it. And the church was built on Christ, the same church that just 200 years later was persecuting people who called themselves Christians, who were centered on love, but did not follow the rules of the church. They had women as priests. They proclaimed that it's not necessary to have priests as an intermediary between you and the divine. Oh my goodness. This was very upsetting to the founders of the church. This had nothing to do with love by 2 centuries after Christ. And these Christians were called Gnostics. Gnosis means to know something. It's a Greek word. And they said, we know. We know directly. We don't need a priest to tell us. We don't need a priest to forgive us. We don't need a church to guide us. We need the divine. And we know the divine directly. Well, as a result of this, they were persecuted. And that is a bit of a weak word for meaning they were hunted and killed and slaughtered. To protect the way they looked at the world in what was their religion, they put the scrolls that contained all of this into earthenware jars in a cave, and they were not discovered until 1948. When they were discovered, some of these scrolls were burned to start fires, cooking fires, because an old woman found them and had no idea what she found. But scholars who examined the remains knew what they were. Remarkably, a different version of Christianity. Now, I'm saying all of this because there's a great deal of wisdom in these Gnostic Gospels. Not the kind of Gospels you'll find in a hotel room. The church did not permit them. One of these Gospels was written by Thomas. And here we come to my point. I love this saying of Christ that Thomas says Christ said, if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. Oh, that went straight into my heart, my being, the first time I read that. If that's what Christ said, I believe it must have come from a presence of the magnitude and the loving stature of this consciousness we're calling the Christ. Whether it did or it didn't, it called to me. And maybe it calls to you because I see a truth in it. You were born to give gifts. And if you don't give these gifts, you will never be fulfilled. When you start to give these gifts, that is where your meaning and purpose and vitality and creativity come from. And that is where your joy arises in your life. Your gift may be to raise a family. Your gift may be to create a business, which is very different from the social structure of commerce. Your gift may be simply to love people. Your gift may be to work with your hands. Your gift may be to write poetry. Your gift may be to teach children. Your gift may be to help people in healing. Whatever your gift is, it's unique to you. Other people may have it, but only you can fulfill it in you. Only you can give the gift that's in you. And you cannot do that while you are in the control of a part of your personality that originates in fear. And that's where creating authentic power comes in. It comes in everywhere in the new consciousness. The new consciousness that is replacing the consciousness that was human consciousness for millennia. That is a human consciousness that was limited to what can be seen and tasted and touched and heard and smelled. If it couldn't be detected by the five senses in the old consciousness, it didn't exist. The new consciousness is not limited to the five senses. That means the new consciousness is aware of much, much, much more than the old consciousness, and it can recognize it as real. For example, your soul, a part of yourself, a part of your personality that is immortal, a part of your personality that existed before you were born and that will exist after you die. The you that is the personality is a little you. The you that existed before you were born is a big you, capital Y. That's your soul. That's detectable, experienceable to the new consciousness. And hundreds of millions of us are acquiring the new consciousness. Or you might say it's emerging in us. Or you might say we are emerging in it. Whatever way you choose to look at it, it's expanded beyond the limitations of the five senses. And it no longer sees power as the ability to manipulate and control. It no longer pursues external power. Instead, it creates consciously real power. Power that is not limited by fear. Nothing is limited by fear. But until you become aware in your life, a lot of your life is limited by fear. And in fact, as you become conscious, as the new consciousness emerges in you, you begin to realize that fear is an illusion, that the entire realm of fear is an illusion. That's why John Lennon did not write a song called All You Need Is Fear, because that's absurd. He wrote a song called All You Need, Everything You Need. You don't need anything more than love, because love is everything. It is you. It is what you are. And you see that not when frightened parts of your personality occlude or obstruct that experience. Creating authentic power is finding every one of those frightened parts of your personality, becoming intimately familiar with it, which means never suppressing or repressing or denying a painful emotion, and then challenging it. That doesn't mean go to war with it. That doesn't mean you're better than it. It simply means you intend to move beyond its control. And you do that by choosing intentionally, consciously, to act from a loving part of your personality, to act from gratitude or appreciation or patience or contentment or awe of the universe while you are experiencing the frightened part of your personality with its painful physical sensations in your energy processing centers and its judgmental, critical thoughts. That is how you create authentic power. In that moment, you move beyond the control of that frightened part of your personality. In that moment, you infuse your word or your deed with the energy, the consciousness of love. In that moment, energy becomes matter in your life. In that moment, you create karma and you choose. You are a powerful and creative, compassionate, and loving spirit. If you're still asking yourself, am I happy or am I joyful? Take a look. If what you're calling joy is dependent on the external world, on what the world does it recognize you? Does it not? Are you ill? Did you lose your house? Are you homeless? Does your happiness depend on that? That's not joy. Joy is independent of all of that. I've had the privilege of encountering 3 homeless people in my life that lifted me up. I never met them because I didn't stop the car long enough to give them some money. But there was about their energy something that was joyful. Joyful. One of them talked to me about the benefits of the snow that was coming. And he didn't have a shelter to go to. That's joy. That's love. It's what is calling all of us. It's calling all of us to move beyond the control of the frightened parts of your personality. And those are the only parts that judge others or yourself. It's a wonderful, exciting, fulfilling, engaging way to be, to love, which is the same as to be in meaning, which is the same as to say in love. We'll talk more about love many times because that's your curriculum in the Earth School. So now I'm going to give you a soul step. As you go through your life between now and the next podcast, or between now and the next hour, look at yourself, look at your experiences, and see, are they painful physical experiences in your solar plexus, in your chest, and your throat? Or are they good feeling physical sensations? If they're painful, you're experiencing fear. And while you're experiencing fear, you cannot love. The two are mutually exclusive. While you're in love, there's no memory of fear. You're present. You're in the moment. You are joy. You are love. And while you're in fear, love is not present. And the choice is yours. That's what the new consciousness is bringing to our awareness strongly. We are choosers. That is our power. We don't have choice as a power. We are choice. We are powerful and creative, compassionate and loving spirits. So look at your experiences between now and the next podcast, or now and the next hour, or now and the next time you remember, and see, is your experience joy or is it happiness? And if it's happiness, learn what you can about creating authentic power. And you can learn a lot through these podcasts, but you can learn a lot also by reading the books about authentic power, taking courses on authentic power, and they're all there for you on seatofthesoul.com. That's the website that I enjoy, that I co-created with our support team, my spiritual partners. But you're my spiritual partners too, and that's why I'm sharing these things with you. Am I experiencing happiness or am I experiencing joy? What is waiting for you is the stabilized, ongoing experience of joy, because that's what you are when no fear prevents you from experiencing what you are. It's so good to be with you. I'm looking forward to being with you next time. I'm Gary Zukav.